Hello, my name is Pamela Brown. I am a gifted support teacher and case manager for the Warren County School District. Today I am going to be presenting the action plan for developing a new multi-criteria matrix for our district. So the goal that I have set up is to update the Warren County School District multiple criteria matrix and align it to Chapter 16. My rationale behind this goal is that our current matrix doesn't align to what I've learned in this class. Our current matrix was developed prior to the changes that took place when Chapter 16 removed talents. And the original matrix that we had a pretty heavy component for talent, to the point that we often were qualifying students with like a 115 to a 120 IQ, but their talent would put them into the program. Once Chapter 16 made those changes, and it came to the attention that that shouldn't be there, which I believe was about 3 years ago, the matrix was redesigned and to update it. However, what they really did was just took the talent part out and didn't address what was missing. And through this course, what I have learned is that there are some parts to it that are not effective, and it is not really helping to qualify many of our kids. This is the first part of the current matrix that we're using. It has 4 columns to it: the cognitive intellectual functioning, which is going to be the IQ testing, academic achievement or specific academic aptitude, creativity, and leadership ability. Those 4 were there when the talents were there. The talent column was just removed, and then this is what we were left with. So some flaws that I see with this particular matrix are that the achievement data is very narrow. If you look at the achievement column, it just shows the indicators being from the Woodcock-Johnson 3 or the WAT 3, and there's no reference at all to state testing, benchmarks, classroom performance, or anything like that. And in addition, if you look in the creativity, we're looking at achievement for 2 or more grade levels. I really don't see how achievement at 2 or more grade levels above the district planned instruction in creativity and leadership is really giving us a good indication of somebody's giftedness. And so I just see that there are some things that we need to look at. And I think that the thing that was most prevalent to me as we were discussing this in the class was that there is no indication of parent input in this at all. As a matter of fact, what I see when we go into those meetings and the evaluation is presented to the parents, that's the first that they're really having any input or any knowledge of anything at all. And at that point, the decisions have already been made. So with that being said, what I would like to do is I would like to update this matrix to bring it into alignment with what it needs to be. So this is the scoring part of the matrix. And as you can see, there are a good number of ways that kids can be qualified. They can make it with just their IQ test if it's 30 or 130 or greater. But then if it's less than that, there are other ways that we can do it. I think that the scoring it is decent, and that we can use this same format of scoring for the new matrix. I would want to make sure, though, that we are not qualifying those kids that are down here in this low 115 to 120 range, we probably really need to not be looking at anybody that's less than like a 121. So developing a new multi-criteria matrix, who would be involved in that process? At some point, all of the following people will play a part in the process. We'll have the superintendent, we will have the director of gifted, the director of special ed. It's important to note here that the director of gifted and the director of special ed in our district are two different people. Gifted education does not fall under special education as far as a director's job within our district, and part of that is because the special ed director and the gifted administrator do not get along, and so the special ed, the director of gifted was put into place, or I should say the program was given to a different director in order to separate the two of those out. And that will be something of importance to note as we go through the steps. Our gifted administrator, our gifted staff, the department head for the psychology department, the psychology staff, the regular education teachers. At some point, all of these people will play a part in this process. So developing the multi-criteria matrix, the win of it. Ideally, we would like to start this process in early May. The director of gifted is retiring in June, and so I think it's important to get this process started before she retires. It won't be completed before she retires. We're looking at probably not being able to complete it until late October, but with her retiring, we want to make sure that we get this process started. Some other points to consider. Again, I already talked about the director of gifted and the director of special ed not being the same person. The psychology department is currently short 2 staff members, and a 3rd staff member will be going out on maternity leave at the end of this school year and will be out at the beginning of the next school year. And historically, the psychology department is busiest at the end of the school year and at the beginning of the school year, as that's when they're wrapping up paperwork and then starting new paperwork. And so this timeline may be a little crunched because of that. And therefore, the timeline may not work, but this is the timeline that I'm going to propose. So these would be the steps that I would propose in developing this process. Number 1, we're going to have an initial meeting. That meeting would be between myself, the gifted administrator, the director of gifted, and the superintendent. And that would just be to show them what I have learned and then to propose that we need to have a new matrix. At that point, the director of gifted and the superintendent would need to go to the director of special ed and arrange with her to have her to bring her on board with this plan, because the 3rd step would then be her assigning somebody in the psychology department, be it the head or a different person, in order to make this plan work, because the gifted department and the psychology department are going to have to work together, as it ultimately will be the psychologists that have to use this matrix. So the 4th step would then be actually developing the new matrix between the psychology department and the gifted department. The 5th would then just be to train the rest of the gifted staff and all of the psychologists that will be using the matrix. The 6th step would be the professional development of the regular education teachers, explaining to them what their process would be, especially if we're going to be looking for some different kind of teacher input than we've had before, along with, testing and stuff that they're doing in their classes. Many of our kids are being referred by their teachers, and their teachers are very frustrated when it comes back and those kids don't qualify. And so we'd really like them to see what it is that it takes for kids to be qualified. And so they need to have some training in that as well. And then the 7th step would be, of course, full implementation, which I would hope we would be able to do sometime in the fall of this next school year. So the implications, success, and evaluation. Implications. This can dovetail with our district acceleration policy. Many of the tests that we can look at for achievement would be the same test that we would look at for that. And we've already done a lot of research in that situation and seen what is available in our district to use for achievement. And another implication that I thought about would be that the need to reassess recently non-qualifiers for using the matrix. If the policy is that a child can only be evaluated once in a school year and they're not allowed to be, re-evaluated during that school year, we might want to be able to look at anybody within the last year that could possibly qualify, notify those parents, inform them of this new process, and give them that choice of having their children re-looked at to see if the new matrix would qualify their child. Success. I think for me, the biggest success will be the stakeholders realizing that there's a need for this new matrix and embracing this process. I think that given the personality conflict between a lot of these stakeholders and their being able to overcome that is going to be key in the success to this. And then finally, the evaluation, knowing how we've completed this action plan would be that we're using that new matrix that would align with the Chapter 16 coding guidelines. And that through that process, more students would be being qualified and receiving services. Of course, the research for this is based in Chapter 16, Code 1621. C, D, E, and F all have a part of this. And then also, if we look at the guidelines, pages 7 to 9, they also refer in depth to what is needed for this process.